Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining our presentation at the Alt.HRI track at the conference Human Robot Interaction 2020. Together with Adam, we wrote a paper titled Sex Robots in Care, setting the stage for a discussion on the potential use of sex robots for persons with disabilities. I'm Eduard Fosch-Villaronga, and I currently work at the ELO Center for Law and Digital Technologies at Leiden University. If you're curious about what I do, you can check this website, but my research revolves around understanding what are the legal and regulatory implications of emerging robot technology. We wrote this piece together with my dearest colleague and friend Adam Poulsen, who is at Charles University in Australia working on a fascinating interdisciplinary topic of robots for LGBTQAI+ elder care. Together, today, however, we will talk about sex robots in care. And in particular, we will start explaining how society has often neglected the sexual rights of people with disabilities. We're going to quickly introduce the concept of sex robots, and we will look at some of the potential applications that these robots can have for care. And we will close the presentation reflecting upon some of the societal design considerations that need to take place to help realize this technology. The raison d'etre of this article is very simple. Although every human should enjoy physical touch, intimacy, and sexual pleasure, persons with disabilities are often not in the position to fully experience the joys of life in the same manner as able people. Although sexuality is a central aspect of human experience, awareness and knowledge do not come straightforward for disabled populations. On the contrary, evidence suggests that this is largely constrained, pathologized, and ignored in different health settings. Many aspects constrain how people with disabilities experience and engage with themselves as sexual beings, including their particular disability, sociocultural aspects, religion, economics, age, and gender factors. But some of the most worrisome barriers come from the very same institutions who some believe that people with intellectual disabilities or other disabilities should not have a sexual life, reproduce, or look after children, and therefore should not need sexual and reproductive health services. Other studies show that able people perceive people with disabilities as having fewer sexual and reproductive rights, sometimes even as asexual, especially women, when this is actually not the case. If a person is physically disabled, physical disability may prevent that person from satisfying her sexual needs. For instance, think about a person who is deprived of her upper limbs or is paralyzed. On the other side, people experiencing mental illness may experience sexuality and intimate relationships very differently for several reasons. Some of them relate to their mental health condition that often leads to them having poor sexual outcomes, including high rates of sexually transmitted infections or bloodborne disease, unplanned pregnancy, or even sexual assault. Others are more structural and social factors associated with their mental illness, including stigma. And also the medication that they take also decreases their sexual desire levels or physical levels, so actually leading to sexual dysfunction. It could also be that organizations are confused about the legality of offering support to a safe sexual expression. However, since 1993, the United Nations has stressed that persons with disabilities should enjoy family life and personal integrity and should not be denied the opportunity to experience their sexuality, have sexual relationships, and experience parenthood. So some countries have reflected on how the general and abstract idea of the sexual rights of people with disabilities can be translated into concrete actions. In the Netherlands, for instance, they materialize it into what has been called sex care, which is a sexual service for people with severe physical or mental disabilities, often done by professionals with a background in healthcare, focused on intimacy, physical touch, and sexual satisfaction for disabled clients. However, while sex care is good progress in materializing the abstract idea of supporting a person's sexual needs, it also raises many questions. First, it is not clear the necessary knowledge required for satisfying the sexual needs of a disabled person and whether there should be minimum safeguards. Second, sex work is controversial concerning sex workers' legal status and the lack of institutionalized structure Actually, that it is illegal in many jurisdictions, and oftentimes it masks other crimes that range from violence against sex workers to human trafficking. And in this respect, it is very controversial to think that publicly available funds should cover these services. For these reasons, sex care has been far from successful. So with Adam, we thought about assistive robot technology, which holds a huge potential to help users perform daily activities, from feeding robots that help users enjoy a meal to exoskeleton that help users walk back again, and wondered if this assistive technology could help disabled populations with their sexual needs. So, sex robots are service robotics that perform actions contributing directly towards improvement in the satisfaction of the sexual needs of a user. And typically, sex robots have different embodiments, including fully or partially bodied humanoids, body parts such as arms, heads, or genitals used for sex related tasks, or non biomimetic robotic devices used for sexual pleasure. These robots usually display realistic sex related body movements, have sensors to react in real time to user interaction, and include human cues such as voice, gaze, and lip sync to support human-like human-robot interactions. Given the current attitudes and narratives concerning sexuality, however, it is of little astonishment that sex robots are usually not targeted to people with disabilities, but young and non-disabled and typically straight men. However, it is true that sex robots have many sexual characteristics and capabilities that may prove useful in fulfilling the sexual desires of those in disability care. As a tool, sex robots could provide a safe environment for persons with disabilities to explore sexuality. Some sex robots, such as Rocky or Roxy, can perform simple sexual movements, like moving back and forth from the user rather than require the user to move. And this function could be useful for those with physical disabilities, as it affords the user the ability to use a sex robot without significant physical cost. While sex robots have a clear functional goal to satisfy user sexual needs, manufacturers profoundly stress their technology's emotional support side. So, for instance, Samantha and other sex robots from Cynthia Amatus are equipped with human like cues such as likes and dislikes, laughter, and moods. And Rocky, for instance, an android sex robot, could help in a closeted gay men, for instance, who never pursued gay relationships or sexual relationships to explore that in a safe environment. Sex robots also could help disabled people with cognitive challenges learn about sexuality and emotions, including consent. And this is really important because abusive sexual behavior in disabled populations is unsettlingly common. Paradoxically, technology seems to be the source of and the solution to societal problems, and robots are no exception. There are countless of examples of how technology has been proposed to solve inadequate engineering practice, government policy failures, or modern consumerism outcomes, showing how technological fixes have cultural, ethical, and political implications. So sex robots may offer a good solution to support human dignity for disabled populations, but these robots may also bring other unexpected consequences. Since the use of sex robots for care purposes is still under exploration, the literature lacks a comprehensive understanding of the positive and negative impacts of sex robots. One of the aspects that the literature highlights is that sex robot technology could promote the desensitization towards sexual behavior, and that it may help justify or reinforce one's poor actions through the distortion of one's cognition from frequent sex robot use. Sex robots may also contribute to the objectification of women and further reinforce the society biases that relate to sexism or machismo, which are a crude reality. And in general, there is also the understanding that the insertion of robots for care purposes might imply the dehumanization of caring practices, which is actually something very essential in human care. In the context of the use of sex care robots, however, it is uncertain whether they could dehumanize care practices or enhance it, because the reality shows that current nursing homes and disabled care facilities fail in vast numbers to recognize the sexual needs of their users. So perhaps the inclusion of sex robots could, on the contrary, help realize the recognition of the sexual rights of the users and make care practices more humane. These reasons led Richardsons to campaign against the development of sex robots and push for a European ban. With bans, however, that negative public attitudes towards sex robots might have little impact on preventing the industry from developing such technology. So these reflections anticipate that the design and implementation of sex robots in care is not straightforward and requires careful thought. In Johnston's words, modern problems cannot be reduced to mere engineering solutions over the long term. So because human goals are diverse and they are also constantly changing. So a great start would be to follow initiatives that promote reflection upon the consequences and outcomes of technological research and development that foster the incorporation of societally oriented considerations into the research or the design process. And these exercises would entail researchers and designers working in this area to anticipate potential adverse consequences of the work to build socially robust and risk-free research, reflect mindfully about their work, framing issues, problems, and propose solutions, be inclusive and conduct research not only for society, but also with society, thus involving a wide range of stakeholders from the early stages of the process, respond to circumstances that no longer align with society's continually evolving needs and public values, and also be transparent about the research so that then it can be enabled public scrutiny and dialogue. Following these approaches would allow for new avenues in how society conceives robots. And in this respect, the human robot interaction community could help generate counter narratives about potential sexual futures that include older adults, persons with disabilities, different sexual orientations, and sex robots to counteract the technological determinism ruling our contemporary narratives. So, to conclude, several difficulties may negatively impact an individual's well being, including sexual life, and society should take reasonable steps to support human capabilities as part of a more all inclusive duty to respect human dignity. Robot technology could help in this respect, but it does not come without drawbacks. It also may contribute to the loss of contact and reinforce existing socioeconomic inequalities or fail to deliver good care. So the question is, what do you really think? How we could use technology in this respect? Thank you so much for your attention.